What's up guys, and welcome back to Move Plus. I hope you had an awesome day. Having a look at that warm up now guys, we're gonna kick things off with 1 minute of cardio of your choice. We're gonna go with a box jump over. So we've picked a nice low box and we'll just be going side to side, but you guys can get creative, do your own thing there. Once we clear that part, the next 2 minutes, what we're gonna do is we go 30 seconds of jumping jacks, and then we move into 30 seconds of alternating Samsons. So it's a lunge with an overhead reach. From there, the next 2 minutes will be 30 seconds of burpees, and then moving into 30 seconds of reverse lunges. So that'll be 5 minutes in total. Em, you good to go?
Yep.
All right, so starting off with that 1 minute of cardio of your choice. We're doing our box jump overs, but you can be a little creative, pick your own thing here if you want to. And go for it. So it's really important guys that when you're picking your movement for that cardio, it should be nice and continuous. So nothing too heavy where it's gonna stop you in your tracks. Nothing too technical where there's the ability to kind of break down on form. It should just be nice and simple. Very much about getting the heart and lungs cranked up. We wanna get that blood flow going through the body. So make sure it's something simple, something accessible, especially if you've come into this after having maybe sat in the car for a while driving during work or whatever it is, or at the computer. You want to allow that body just to move into it smoothly. So nice simple movement, the box over guys. Notice Em sort of jumping for the middle of the box so that she has the ability just to pivot, turn herself so she's already facing in for that next jump once she hits the ground. We've got 10 more seconds on this one. 3, 2, 1, and go for it. So we're moving into this second section guys. So this is a 2 minute block. We'll see 30 seconds of jumping jacks and 30 seconds of alternating Samson stretch. Obviously we do 2 cycles of that to make up that 2 minute block. We're gonna be on the balls of the feet for these jumping jacks guys. So it's a nice springy reactive bounce and nice big shoulder swings there, getting up to overhead at the top. 5 more seconds. And moving to the Samson stretch. So we've gone from more of like a cardio-based movement to now a little bit more sort of mobility-based. So probably slowing this one down is a good idea. Make a nice long lunge, so probably a little longer than your normal setup. So if we sort of have a slightly more sort of lengthy reach with that leg, and then really trying to stretch up and over. So you'll get that stretch down the side of the lat, down into the oblique, and that'll travel right down into the hip flexor as well. 3, 2, 1, so back on jumping jacks again. So as I said, we do a second cycle of this to make up that 2 minute block. Once we've finished this second cycle, we move into the last 2 minute section, which will be burpees and reverse lunges in the same format. Okay, 10 more seconds. 3, 2, 1, and go into Samson stretch. So if you're doing this outside, guys, maybe you're on some hard concrete, good idea to chuck like a yoga mat down just for the safety of your knee. Obviously, Em's got knee sleeves on here, that works well as well, but if you don't have those, a little bit of cushioning just so you're not scraping your knees on the hard ground. So we do want you to go all the way down, get that nice full range of motion. Okay, so about to roll into that last section. 3, 2, 1, and going into burpees for 30 seconds now. So full chest to ground position at the bottom there. You want to lay all the way down, and then at the top we're getting a small jump with a hand contact above or behind the head, making sure that the hips are nice and open as well. So it's a fully extended hip position. Okay, 10 more seconds. So our secondary movement is going to be reverse lunges, which we'll go to in about 5 seconds. All right, and go for it. So we're stepping back into this one. So similar kind of leg position to the Samson stretch, although we're gonna probably shorten this in a little bit. We went quite long with that one because we're looking for more of a mobility piece. This we're gonna go with a nice structurally sound sort of squared up position. So should see sort of 90-degree bends at all the joints. And we want to think about kind of driving that lead leg heel through the ground. 3, 2, 1, and back on the burpees. So it's a nice smooth roll down. We don't have to do like a full strict push-up. So don't stress if you don't have push-ups on the toes, guys. You don't need to do that. You can just lower the legs into it first and roll down and then roll back up again. Three, 2, 1, and into those lunges one last time. So stepping back into those. As you're doing these, guys, good idea to kind of cast the eyes down every now and then. Check that your knee and your toes are kind of pointing in the same direction, so we're tracking really well. Sometimes people have the tendency to have the foot splayed out a little bit and that knee collapses inwards, so we want to try and correct that if we need to. Three, 2, 1, and done. All right, so guys, that is the warm-up done. Take some recovery time. We're going to check out the move workout next. Alrighty guys, we're going to check out the move section now. So this is a 12-minute AMRAP. We've got 3 movements we're going to go through. The first one is deadlift. So with our dumbbells, we are hinging at the hips, touching the front ends of the dumbbell to the floor, and then standing up nice and tall. From there, we're going to move into push-ups as the next movement. So hands and feet stance nice and close, going chest to ground up to lockout. The last piece there, we have a mountain climber with a jump over the dumbbell. So how this one will go is we're going to do a 4 counts on one side. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we're going to pop up, jump over the top, and then go to the next one. So that would be 1 rep as the 4 count and the jump. Now, each of these movements, it's 14 reps. So 14 deadlifts, 14 push-ups, 14 cycles of that combo movement at the end there. And we're going for 12 minutes to do as many rounds as you can. Good to go? Yep. All right, starting in 10. All right, going in 3, 2, 1, and go for it. So first thing to think about with this, guys, 12 minutes is in that kind of intermediate time frame, right? It's not super short, it's not super long. So it's about managing your output. We want to work hard, but we also want to make sure we don't blow ourselves up in the first 3 or 4 minutes. So think about a strong pace where you feel like you've got a little bit left in reserve. And always a good idea too to check your time splits per movement and per round, and that way you can get an early sort of look into what kind of time frame, what kind of rounds you might be able to push out in 12 minutes. So as we move from that into the push-ups next. So M's going with the full push-ups on the toes. You can also go on the knees if you're needing to scale that a little bit. Okay, which looks like that. But either way you do it, you want the bottom half of the body and the top half of the body pulled in nice and narrow. So narrow stance or narrow knees, and then narrow hands as well. Okay, so we're going for 14 reps on this. Keeping that trunk nice and tight. So you want to feel like everything's moving together as one sort of like a plank of wood, everything's moving as one straight piece. Now we go through the 14 cycles of a 4 count and a jump. So that would be 1 repetition. That's 2, okay, and so on and so forth until we hit 14. So it's fairly quick cycling, even though there's sort of like 5 movements per rep. This will move pretty quick, and this is where you're going to really be able to jack that heart rate up. So try to move quick on this one. It's a fairly simple, straightforward movement. Main thing with the mountain climber is just being able to keep that good sort of push-up position. So shoulders kind of over the top of the hands, so we're not getting faded back behind them, staying stacked over the top, and whichever leg is straight, that it's at a full stretch out the back, so we're not jackknifing the bum up high in the air. Okay, now you notice with this, she'll set her feet up next to the dumbbell with that jump rather than her hands, because the feet is the part of the body that's going to be going over the top of it. So we want to make sure that we're not setting up the feet behind the dumbbell, because then there's nothing to jump. Nice work, Em. So once she gets to 14 cycles of this, we're going to move back to the start of the list, which is the deadlifts again. All right, so we set up a nice close stance with this one. So think sort of hips width, shins nice and vertical, right? So we're going to think about the upper leg, the hips, the lower torso, all of that kind of pushing back into that hamstring stretch. And we're looking for the front ends of the dumbbells to touch down. It's a little different to when we do, say, like a single arm snatch or something where we're touching both heads of the dumbbell. We just want to tip the front ends down. And the main thing is we keep that back really, really straight. You don't ever want to get into a curved position as you move through this. The spine should be fixed and just hinging through the actual hip joint itself. All right, so moving back into the push-ups. Now, probably out of the 3 of these movements, this is the one that's going to fatigue the fastest. So good idea to kind of strategically break it up into little manageable chunks. You might start off being able to go unbroken for 14. That's awesome if you can, but don't be afraid to go like a 5-5-4 split or something like that, or 7-7. Sometimes it's worth just taking that little bit of rest, and that's going to allow us to get more rounds in the long run. So you notice when she is having that little rest, she's coming back to sit back onto her legs rather than staying on top of her arms or stopping on the ground, because you want to get your arms in a position where we can kind of get that lactic acid out and get them a really nice recovery. All right, so back onto the 14 cycles of that mountain climber and jump over the dumbbell. Remember, it is a 4 count of that leg movement and then jumping over the top. So good idea, as Em's doing here, she's kind of got the eyes cast down just a little bit, just so she can kind of keep an eye on where that dumbbell is. Sometimes if you're looking elsewhere, it's easy for the feet to end up in the wrong spot, and you don't know where the dumbbell is to jump, but you don't want to trip over the top of it. You also don't want to be jumping over thin air either. You want to make sure you're in the right spot to actually jump that target. And the knee tuck itself, guys, we want to aim for sort of maybe like sternum height, so it's a fairly high tuck. You want to come sort of halfway up that torso. All right, so back to the top of the list again, going into those deadlifts. Now, if you do happen to have really tight hamstrings, guys, you're a little bit immobile there, you feel like you get halfway down the shins and then the back wants to give, like starts to round over to try and get to the floor, just pull the depth a little bit. It's more important that we maintain that spinal position. So for some of you, maybe it might be just going past the knees or something like that. You can actually go a shallow version if you want, just like that. You sort of want to try and make like wrists to the knees like the bare minimum kind of depth, but obviously do where your flexibility allows you to get to. And as you stand up, we want to think about sort of hamstrings, glutes, them doing the work to really straighten us up. One of the things Em does really well with these push-ups is as she comes down, she's actually kind of loading the chest forward, right? So it's not sort of, she's not behind her hand, she's going to get right up over the top of them, and as she comes down, her forearm is going to kind of draw a perpendicular line through the line of her body, so she's loading forward to those shoulders, keeping a nice vertical forearm as she hits the bottom there. So past halfway in this time cap now, so we're on the downhill run. All right, so making a little wall again with that dumbbell, going into these mountain climbers. So one thing we want to try and sort of copy that Em's doing here is when she comes up out of that mountain climber and also when she comes down into the mountain climber, is just keeping the hips fairly high. So there's actually very minimal knee bend through the jump up and down part. Obviously they'll bend during the mountain climber piece, but here she brings those legs in. It's like the body kind of jackknifes up into a high hip position. That's going to stop us kind of crunching those knees. If you're sort of dumping the knees forward, ending up on the balls of the feet, you can do that repetitively. It's just a lot of extra strain on the joint there that we don't need. So being able to get the hips high allows us to get onto the full surface of our foot, so getting the heels down. And that's going to be better as far as wear and tear goes. Doing a good job, Em. All right, so moving back on the 14 deadlifts. Now, hopefully along the way, guys, you've been checking out your split times, so seeing how long a round takes, and you're getting onto a nice, consistent rhythm with that. One of the things you want to take notice of is if you get a really, really fast first round and then your last round is super slow compared to that, probably not gone out quite at the optimal pace. So you want to try and find that speed that's like the fastest repeatable speed. That's always going to lead us to the best score we can get. So in the last third of that time cap now, as you move through these push-ups, guys, we want to check out that the legs are active as well, right? So as she comes down, those quads are going to stay locked on. That's going to stop the knees or the thighs sort of bottoming out and leaving weight on the ground. We really should find that just the chest, or at most sort of the rib cage, is the only thing that actually weight bears on the floor, and that's our touch marker. If you find that your hips and thighs are actually taking weight on the ground, we want to try and tighten up that midsection, lift that lower body a little bit. All right, so notice how she sets those hands up forward of the dumbbells, guys, because that puts her feet in the right spot to do the jump over. That slightly wider stance as she jumps up to the top is allowing her to jackknife the hips a little bit easier. So you'll notice when she jumps out, even though the feet are going to split apart in that mountain climber movement, the base where they're going to come back to is quite narrow. And then as she comes up, she's going to drive out to maybe about shoulder width or even slightly wider. And the overall goal with the actual mountain climber piece to this, guys, is try not to let that body bobble up and down or shift around. We're trying to hold it pretty well in place and just move the legs underneath us. So inside the final 2 minutes. All right, so moving back to the top of the order, guys, we've got about 90 seconds left, just under. Think about keeping the knees apart as you move through this deadlift. If they feel like they're going to collapse in on each other, you use your glutes, use that nice external rotation to kind of push the knees out against the forearms. There should always be sort of a gap, 5 or 6 inches between the knees there. Okay, inside the last 50 seconds. Thirty seconds. Okay, last 15 seconds. We'll get as many of these mountain climber jumps as we can. 3, 2, 1, and done. All right, nice work, Em. Guys, that is the move section done. Have a little bit of recovery time, get some water in, and then we're gonna go through a little bit of mobility to finish off. All right, guys, now that all the hard work is done, we're just gonna cool things down with a little bit of stretching. So first drill we're gonna do is just good old-fashioned standing quad stretch. So with this one, just pulling one foot up behind. I'm gonna chuck a timer on. We'll go for 45 seconds on each side. Now, Em's got pretty good balance. That's the gymnastics background there. She doesn't need to hold on anything. If you do feel like you're kind of hopping around the place, losing balance, set yourself up by a wall or a door frame, or grab onto a friend or a partner, whatever you need to do, get that balance. But we wanna try and hold the one position. A couple of key things you wanna think as far as the setup is knees are gonna pinch as close together as you can get them. And then you're also gonna think about abs and glutes kind of contracting and sort of rolling that pelvis back a little bit, but also driving it forward through the stretch. So we're tensioning up that stretch. We'll go 10 more seconds and then we'll switch. 3, 2, 1, and changing sides. I also want to check in with this that you're trying to keep your shoulders and hips level and square to the front as well. Sometimes with these stretches, if you're really tight through that quad, especially the hip flexor, if you kind of body's trying to escape away from it, it might move on some weird angles. So try to get everything up and open, nice and flat to the front, and then breathing through it. So try to sort of push those hips through, allow it to relax off and open through there. This is going to be really important for a lot of things about explosive hip extension, so cleans, jumps, all that sort of stuff. 3, 2, 1, and that's that one done. The second one we're going to do is going to be the reverse. This is going to be looking at the back side of things. So we're going to do a staggered stance good morning. So Em's feet are right next to each other, but one foot in front of the other one, okay? And what she's going to do, she's going to hinge over and we're just going to hold there. So again, we'll go 45 seconds each side. Okay, now where you have your hands doesn't particularly matter. If you want to go across the chest, up behind the head, reaching down, whatever you prefer. The main thing is that that back stays flat. So this is going to be the individual piece to each of you. Is some of you might be here and that might be far enough. Some of you might be here. Some of you might be right down in that nice sort of L position or up inverted L position that M's in there. So a full 90-degree bend at the hip. You're going to find that the leg that is out in front is the one that's really going to cop the stretch. So you can emphasize one side at a time. We're just hanging out there. 5 seconds. And switching. Okay, so that same setup. So the feet are basically on train tracks, but we're just going to step one forward, soften both knees, okay, and then push forward. The better you get at this, the straighter you're going to be able to get those knees. So if you've got really tight hamstrings, you might have to bend them quite a bit to be able to lean right over. But as you get better, you can kind of push back on them, open up those hamstrings. And done. All right, so those are the 2 drills, guys. If you have time, go through that 3 or 4 times. Give the body a good loosen up. Otherwise, we will catch you next time. That's been your MOV+ workout.